This is the Odin2 Mini, the latest Android-based handheld by manufacturer AYN, and this device right here is currently very hyped in the scene because its predecessor, or let's rather say its bigger sibling, the Odin2, is considered by many to be one, if not the best emulation handheld currently on the market. So the Odin2 Mini has quite a legacy to live up to, and after using it for the last week or so, I think it might just have pulled it off, except for maybe a few minor caveats. Let me explain. Before we start, AYN sent me the Odin2 Mini as a review unit, but as always with my reviews, no money exchange hands. AYN doesn't know what I'll say in this video and all opinions are my own. Also, this is a pre-production unit, and while it's mostly final, some things are apparently changing, like the choice of plastic they used. From the moment you first hold your Odin2 Mini in hand, you know where AYN got inspiration from. It is so incredibly obvious how much this looks like a PS Vita. Also, there are two color options, this black one and a white one. On the front, the D-pad and buttons look very similar, only that on the Odin2 Mini, AYN used ABXY buttons, while on the Vita you obviously have the famous Sony-shaped buttons. AYN also went more for an Xbox-style layout of analog sticks, since they are offset. By the way, in every app, like for example PPSSPP for PSP emulation, the controllers of the Mini are recognized as Xbox controllers. All these input methods are, by the way, great. While the sticks are maybe a tad smaller to what I'm usually used to, they don't feel as hard to use as the recently reviewed Flip KB, links somewhere up here. The buttons and the D-pad are also great, and while I still suck at fighting games, I don't think you have any problems pulling off your Hadoukens or your Shoryukens or whatever other attack you like. AYN also decided to put front-facing speakers, whereas on the Vita you had these little insertions for loops or straps. By the way, plus points for front-facing speakers. And while you won't use this device as a ghetto blaster, do people even still know what that is, it's good enough for playing video games on the couch without the need to wear headphones. When turning the devices to the back, the similarities remain, but are less obvious. Both devices still have these indentations, but on the Vita you have a touchpad in the middle, while on the Odin2 Mini you have the outlet for the built-in fan, which you can hear at times depending how much you stress the Snapdragon 8 Gen 2 in this device, but more about that chip later. This is also where the device gets the hottest. On the button and on the top the similarities end, since AYN used a different button choice and the layout. Here you have a power button, your volume buttons, the micro SD slot and the micro HDMI plug, while on the bottom you have an USB-C slot and a headphone jack. Size and weight wise, the Odin2 Mini is both larger, thicker and heavier. It comes in at 220 grams compared to the Vita's 260 grams. It is, however, still a small device. If you compare it, for example, to the Vita and the OG Nintendo Switch, it lives right in the middle. And compared to the ROG Ally or the Steam Deck, it just looks tiny in comparison. It technically fits in your pen pockets, depending on the pen, and it's small enough that I stick it in a Switch case and bring it with me. I'm however still looking for a dedicated case, since every Switch case is still too large and I might just have to look at what's still available out there for PS Vita, if anything. If you have a recommendation, please comment down below. So design-wise, on the one hand, I find it kind of blunt that AYN basically just stole the design of the Vita, but on the other hand, the Vita is one of my favorite handhelds ever and I love what it looks like, so I obviously also love what the Mini looks like. So honestly, despite any bias, I think they've nailed it. Now let's talk performance. The Odin2 Mini uses the Snapdragon 8 Gen 2, which is the same chip used in the Odin2, and that chip is the reason why the Odin2 is so popular. It's well supported by the different apps, it's performant enough to emulate everything I threw at it, and we will check that out in a second, and there are even drivers available to make it run even better in different emulators like Yuzu for the Nintendo Switch and Vita 3K for the PS Vita. The Odin2 Mini comes in two different versions. The base model has 8 gigs of memory and 128 gigs of storage, and the Pro model, this is by the way a Pro model, has 12 gigs of memory and 256 gigs of storage. Both versions come in at $339 and $399 respectively, which is honestly a steep price considering the Odin2 is at $299, and while it isn't as well designed, it's still the same internals. Also, from other Odin2 reviews, I know that for most use cases 8 gigs of memory are enough and you can simply expand storage with a micro SD card like this 512 gigs one I use. The Mini comes with a mini LED screen. While it isn't as good as an OLED screen, it is still much better than any old IPS LCD screen used in many of these devices. It is better than the screen in the Odin2. Thanks to its screen, it has a contrast ratio of 1:1,000,000, it has 155% sRGB coverage and it has 385 dimming zones. But if all I just said sounded like Klingon to you, just know this, it's a damn fine screen. Battery-wise, thanks to its 5000 mAh battery, I saw around 3 to 5 hours of playtime, depending of course of what game I played. For example, in God of War 2 for PlayStation 2 in Nether S2X, I had around 78% of battery after 1 hour. While the Odin 2 has a much bigger battery at 8000 mAh, I think this is decent. It's not great, but it's good. It also charges very quickly. Though, one thing I've realized, what seems to be sucking the most battery on the Mini is that screen. Setting it to max brightness kills the battery much faster than it would on other devices. It looks like that Mini LED is power hungry. It's also very bright. Right now I have it at around 5% of brightness, and that's more than enough for nearly every use case. Now let's talk software, emulation and games. Come closer. I hate Android. I don't daily drive an Android device, neither one of the other Android handhelds I own, nor an Android smartphone. I'm an iPhone guy, but every time I need to set up one of these devices, I'm frustrated. To set up the Odin2 Mini the way you see it here in the video with Emulation Station DE at its launcher, a quick way to open up Android apps via the notification tray, and a completely set up installation of all the emulators I care about, I spent around 5 hours. Thankfully, there's this fantastic video guide by my buddy Russ, which is 1 freaking hour long, and the corresponding text guide, which is even longer, but I think without that I would just have given up. Now, there's also another way. By using the desktop version of EmuDeck, you can just automate around 80% of what I did by hand, but apparently I like pain and suffering because I didn't do that. I propose you do this though. Really, save yourself from this madness. Freaking Android. However, when the Odin2 Mini is completely set up like here, the experience is fantastic. Everything works. Emulation Station is now my go-to launcher and has access to all my Android apps. All ROMs I legally acquired, don't sue me, have scraped box arts, and they open in the different standalone emulators I carefully set up. And basically every game I throw at it works. The only times where I felt some hiccups, I simply fix performance by enabling a higher power profile, which you can do by swiping down on the notification tray here and then clicking the corresponding tile. I tested different Pokemon ROM hacks and they obviously work since they even run on a potato. I also very obviously tested different PS Vita games, and while Vita 3K for Android is still very much a work in progress, games like Gravity Rush ran mostly without hiccups and double the resolution. There were just some graphical artifacts here and there. I've also tested PS2 and GameCube emulation, which is where some of these Android-based emulators usually fail, but the Odin2 Mini chomped through it like it had no right, and that upscaled to a 1080p resolution. By the way, if you want to see what games are supported, on the Odin handheld subreddit you'll find a spreadsheet that lists all the games tested by the community so far and if they work on the Odin 2. And since both devices are basically the same performance-wise, the games tested on the Odin 2 should work on this new Mini too. I've also tested this one game from that one platform where you play a blonde guy with pointy ears trying to rescue a blonde princess with pointy ears who is lost in time while fighting this big bad guy, and I must say I wasn't expecting how well this runs. Seriously, a stable 30 FPS in the overworld, close to no hiccups except shader compilation in the beginning and the occasional stutter. It just runs, no tears in the kingdom. Also, because you might be wondering, since Yuzu has officially been nuked by ninja lawyers, you either need to have a copy of the Android file yourself or find one online in a trusting backup repository. So while newer games might not work on Yuzu anymore, games like that one game had been fairly optimized before it got nuked. But I didn't only use this device for emulation. Since it's basically an Android tablet with attached controllers, you can easily play any of the Android games out there. Not all games support controllers though, but thankfully AYN has shipped software that lets you map the hardware buttons to on-screen touch controls. Thanks to Android, you can also use apps like PS Play to stream your PS5 games, apps like Moonlight to stream your PC games library, or apps like GeForce Now to stream games from the cloud, which is something I've done quite a lot, to be honest. While I wouldn't play something like Age of Empires 4 on this, it's great for every other game that has controller support, although maybe a bit small. And yes, I played Hades 2 like that. I seriously want a native port now. So who is the Odin2 Mini for? First things first, if you own an Odin 2, the Mini is probably not for you. It is after all nearly the same device. It has the same chipset, it comes with the same software based on Android 13, and even when you boot the device it says Odin 2. The only major differences are its screen, its reduced form factor, and well, its price. So if you own an Odin 2 and are not either swimming in money or specifically looking for a smaller device, I think you can just pass this. But if you don't own an Odin 2 or simply don't care about what I just said, this device right here might just be one of the best handhelds I got my hands on in a long time. From its PS Vita inspired shape, to its screen, to its performance and support from third-party developers, it doesn't matter how many hours I spent with it, I just can't tire of this device. Now, of course, like I mentioned previously, I very much dislike Android and how cumbersome it is to set up. Then again, all Android devices share this problem, and thanks to the efforts by the team behind EmuDeck, it might just become less of a problem in the future. Though I still can't forget the whole day that I spent setting this device up to make it perfect. It is also an expensive device. $399 for the Pro model is Steam Deck territory, and the Steam Deck can do much more and has far better support than the Odin lineup has. To be honest, since the introduction of the Steam Deck, all these smaller handheld manufacturers have a much harder job to convince us to get one of their devices compared to Valve's attention-grabbing handheld. But I'll say it like this, since getting the Odin2 Mini, I haven't touched either the Steam Deck, nor the ROG Ally, nor any of the other handhelds I own. To me, the Odin2 Mini might just be the perfect balance between size, performance, design and ease of use, well, after having spent one day setting it up, of course, and that despite its high price. So because of that, I can clearly recommend it. I think this might be able to take the spot of the Vita as one of my favorite handhelds. Thank you very much for watching. If you have any questions, shoot them in the comments down below and I'll try to answer them. And while you're down there, leave a like and subscribe. See you in the next video. Bye!